Hey, fourth grade, Miss Rowe and Pebble here. We've got our Spirit Week sports team shirt on. Go Broncos. Hope you all are having a wonderful time at home with your families and that you are safe and healthy. Today we're going to be doing a read aloud for the text from the DCPS Learning Packet for week 1. So stay tuned. To get started with reading our text, we're going to quickly review different elements of a play. The text for this first week is a play, and it's written a little differently than a typical fiction text or informational text. So we refer to a written play as a script. The script is the written play just like what we'll be reading today, which actors use in order to learn the play and later perform it. The words that the actors say in a play are known as dialogue. So we will be seeing most of our text written as dialogue as actors communicating with one another, which is a little different from prose or a typical fiction story. We are explicitly told our setting, where and when this play is taking place, and we will see that at the beginning of our script. Stage directions tell actors how to act. So they may tell an actor to walk in the middle of a scene. They may tell an actor to do a specific action like stand up or sit down or make a hand gesture. Those directions are very important when our actors are using their script to learn how the play should look on stage. And finally, on the first page of our script, we will see the cast of characters, who is in the play, and they are listed in the order that they appear. Here we are at the beginning of our text, Daughters of Liberty, Spinning for Liberty by Sarah Glasscock. So before we get started, I'm going to look at my directions, which tell me that during reading, I need to pay attention to the important details that tell you what the text is mainly about. So I'm really thinking about what is the main idea of this text? What is this text mostly about? That's going to help me to answer my questions and set me up for success when I do my second read and annotation. So here, just like we talked about with our elements of a play, we have our cast of characters. So this actually, when characters are performing a play, is not read out loud, but it is helpful for us to get a preview of the different characters in this play. So I see in order of appearance, that means they're listed in the order that they speak in the play. I know I'll have a narrator, so someone who is not a character in the action, but is describing what the action is happening. We have English visitor, we have several Boston women, Patsy Blair and Helen Dixon. We have many Providence Daughters of Liberty, including Charity Spencer, Abigail Good, and India Bradford. We have several North Carolina Daughters of Liberty, including Caroline Harris, Maud Epperson, and Betsy Warren. Betsy Warren is a Boston Daughter of Liberty, as is Deborah Manning, and there is a Boston merchant named Thomas Boylston. So as I look at this first page of looking at my characters and also at my title, I see it's called Daughters of Liberty, and I notice that most of the characters are women, and most of them fall into some group of a Daughter of Liberty. So I'm going to keep reading to learn more, but this is a clue to me that a main idea of our text is going to have to do with this group, the Daughters of Liberty. Okay, so looking at the beginning of our play, we can already see a few more of our play elements. We know that plays are organized into acts and scenes, and at the beginning of our scene, we are given the setting. We know when this is taking place in 1748 and where in the Boston Commons. Now, we talked about dialogue. This is how dialogue looks in a play. You have the character who is speaking's name, followed by the words that they say on stage. So, when a play is being performed, you wouldn't say the name of the character. As I read aloud today, I am going to say the name of the character, just so it's clear who is speaking, because it's not quite the same as you would see it portrayed on stage. Okay, let's get started with Act 1. Act 1, Scene 1, 1748, Boston Commons. Narrator. Women in colonial America often met to work and talk together. As they spun, sewed, and knitted, they discussed events in their communities, their colonies, and the mother country, England. Soon, political groups were being formed by women. In 1748, a group of 300 Boston women held a political rally in the Boston Commons. They set up their spinning wheels and spent the day working to protest the English control of trade. English visitor. I say, what's going on here? Why are you sitting in the Commons doing your spinning? Haven't you got homes? Patsy Blair. We have. We've got very nice homes filled with furniture made in England out of our trees. Helen Dixon. We read books printed in England. We wear dresses made out of cloth manufactured in England. English visitor. You're very lucky. The English factories are the finest in the world, you know. Patsy Blair. We think the colonies should build their own factories and produce their own furniture and books and cloth. Helen Dixon. Why should we send our natural resources to English factories? English visitor. English workers would lose their jobs. Then they'd be angry at the king. That wouldn't do. That wouldn't do at all. Patsy Blair. We want to create jobs here in the colonies. We want to keep our money and business here. We've come here today to spin our own cloth, to show people that we don't need to depend on England to supply us with the things we need. English visitor. Pardon me for saying so, ladies, but the cloth you spin is very rough. Really, wouldn't you rather feel English cloth against your skin? Patsy Blair. You ask us to pay too high a price for English silk. English visitor. A few shillings a yard. Surely you can afford that. Helen Dixon. Not until we're free to produce cloth here or buy it from any country we choose. It's not a matter of money, it's a matter of liberty. Now, if you'll excuse me, sir, we have work to do. Okay, so after reading Act 1, I'm already thinking that these Daughters of Liberty in Boston are very passionate about having more economic opportunities in the colonies. They feel frustrated that so many resources are being sent back to England instead of contributing to the economy in the colonies. This reminds me of some of the frustrations that we learned about during the American Revolution that led to events like the Boston Tea Party. Let's keep reading. Act 2, Scene 1, 1766, Providence, Rhode Island. So right here, I can see that I have a change of setting. I've gone forward about 20 years, 1766, and I've also moved from Boston to Providence, Rhode Island. So in Act 1, we were examining a group of Daughters of Liberty in Boston. Now I anticipate we'll be examining a group in Rhode Island instead. Narrator. In addition to controlling trade in the colonies, England wanted the colonists to pay taxes on certain goods. In 1765, England passed the Stamp Act. Official stamps had to appear on all important documents, newspapers, pamphlets, advertisements, even playing cards. The stamps cost money, and so were a form of tax. The colonists were outraged. Two groups sprang up to fight the unfair tax. One was a women's group called the Daughters of Liberty. One was a men's group called the Sons of Liberty. These groups formed all over the colonies at about the same time, but the first Daughters of Liberty meeting was probably held in 1766 in Providence, Rhode Island. Charity Spencer. I refuse to buy the stamps. England needs the money to pay for the soldiers it sent here to the colonies. I don't want the soldiers here. I won't pay a tax to support them. Abigail Good. We have no voice in Parliament. We pay taxes, yet we have no one to speak for us in the English government. That's taxation without representation. It's our money. We should have a say in how it's spent. India Bradford. The Stamp Act is unfair. We all know that. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I agree with Charity. I won't buy the stamps. I say we ignore the Stamp Act. Abigail Good. That may not be enough. We should make sure that no one buys the stamps. Charity Spencer. How? Abigail Good. When the stamps arrive from England, send them back, or take them and make sure they're not sold. The Sons of Liberty are planning to meet the ships. I'll be there too. As a daughter of liberty, I'll be there too. India Bradford. The British won't like that. Let's not forget, they have troops stationed here. It would be easy for the king to order them to take the stamps back from us. Abigail Good. Not if the stamps are destroyed. India Bradford. This is a big step. It could lead to real trouble between the colonies and England. Charity Spencer. There's already real trouble between us. We just ask that we be treated fairly by England. India Bradford. We're agreed then. We'll meet the British ship coming into our harbor and demand the stamps. Pass the word on to other daughters and sons. After reading Act 2, I'm seeing similar themes of activism, of fighting for liberty amongst the group in Rhode Island as I saw amongst the group in Boston. So these women are organizing a protest against the Stamp Act because they also believe that the colonies deserve economic freedom and justice from England. Let's read on. Act 3. Scene 1, October 1774, Edenton, North Carolina. Again, I see a change in setting in my where and when. So we've progressed about 8 years to 1774, and now our focus is on North Carolina, whereas before it was on Boston and Rhode Island. Narrator. Thanks to the resistance of the Daughters and Sons of Liberty, the Stamp Act was repealed in 1766. England soon came up with more taxes. In 1767, the Townshend duties put a tax on tea. The Tea Act of 1773 allowed one English company to sell tea cheaply in the colonies. Colonial merchants couldn't sell their tea at such a low price. In Edenton, North Carolina, the Daughters of Liberty held their own, quote, tea party, unquote. This is a connection to what I know will happen later on, the Boston Tea Party. Elizabeth King. Are we going to let the British get away with this? First, they tax our tea. Then they say that one company, the East India Company, can sell their tea at a cheap price to us. No, said Caroline Harris. No, down with English tea. Boycott English tea. I threw my tea canister out the window this very morning. Maud Epperson. It would be tea, wouldn't it? I just love my tea. I won't drink that horrid coffee. I just won't. Elizabeth King. It's English tea you have to give up, Maud, not American tea. We can brew our own tea out of strawberry leaves or sassafras leaves. Caroline Harris. My mother used to boil currant leaves to make tea. Maud Epperson. Doubtfully. Are you sure that's safe? Elizabeth King. The committee has worked hard on the declaration. I'd like to read it, and then we can vote on it. Stage direction, she's reading from a piece of paper. We cannot be indifferent on any occasion that appears to affect the peace and happiness of our country, and it has been necessary for the public good to enter into several particular resolves. We here and now give up the custom of drinking tea, and we promise not to wear any cloth or clothing made in England. All those Daughters of Liberty in favor of this declaration, please raise your hands. Caroline Harris, looking around. No need to count hands. Everyone's raised hers, including Maud Epperson. All 51 of us agree. Maud Epperson. I propose that we send the Declaration to the Daughters of Liberty in all the colonies so they may pass it around. Elizabeth King. Does everyone agree? Good. We're all in favor. Anything else? Maud Epperson. I was thinking about our American tea. We should call it Liberty Tea. Elizabeth King. All those in favor? Looking around. Liberty Tea it is. So in Act 3, we saw more activism from these women in North Carolina who are now refusing to drink English tea because they are so upset that the British are taking advantage of colonists by forcing them to tax their own tea, while tea from England is very cheap and easy to buy. So this activism continues all across the colonies, from Rhode Island to Boston to North Carolina. We're seeing women come together in groups called the Daughters of Liberty to stand up for what they believe is right. Act 4. Scene 1, 1774. Griffin's Wharf on Boston Harbor. So we do see a change in our setting. We're still in 1774, but now we've moved from North Carolina up north to Boston. Narrator. The Sons of Liberty held their own tea party in 1774. They boarded 3 English ships loaded with tea and threw the cargo into Boston Harbor. England was angry at the rebellion and closed Boston Harbor. No goods could be sent to the people of Boston. Still, some warehouses were full of coffee and sugar that had arrived before the harbor was closed. A few merchants began charging high prices for these scarce items. One day, about 100 Daughters of Liberty, some of them wheeling handcarts, paid a call on one of these merchants. Betsy Warren. Mr. Thomas Boylston, open up. Deborah Manning. We've come for some coffee. Thomas Boylston, locking the door after him as he leaves his warehouse. So many customers this morning. Good morning, ladies. There's plenty of coffee for all. Luckily, I got a shipment before the British closed Boston Harbor. I've had to raise the price some. It's 6 shillings a pound. That's not bad, really. Not bad at all. Betsy Warren. It's very bad, Mr. Boylston. Hand over your keys, please. Thomas Boylston. What? Laughing nervously. Oh, I see, you're joking. Of course, of course. Winking. Let me unlock the door and you can just help yourselves. Deborah Manning. We mean business, Mr. Boylston. Hand over your keys or we will break in. Betsy Warren. 6 shillings for a pound of coffee? Shame on you, Mr. Boylston. Shame on you. Thomas Boylston. I'm a merchant, ladies. How do you expect me to feed my family? I didn't attend the tea party. I didn't throw any tea into Boston Harbor. It's not my fault the harbor is closed. Complain to your husbands about the price of my coffee. It's their fault, not mine. Deborah Manning. You love money, Mr. Boylston. You love it more than you love your family or your country or your freedom. Thomas Boylston. What gives you the freedom to steal my coffee? We would like to hand over the keys peacefully, Mr. Boylston, but if you will not, then we will take them from you. Thomas Boylston. I will not hand them over. Deborah Manning takes Thomas Boylston by the neck and throws him into her handcart. A group of women surround the cart. Thomas Boylston. All right, there. He throws the keys on the ground. Narrator. Betsy Warren unlocks the warehouse. The women dump Boylston out of the cart and wheel it into the warehouse. Inside, they work quickly and quietly. In a few minutes, they wheel out their carts, which are now loaded with coffee. The Daughters of Liberty then march home. Deborah Manning, handing Mr. Boylston his keys. We will not make you a rich man, Mr. Boylston, not at the expense of our country. Enjoy your morning, sir. Wow, a very powerful scene. So, thinking back over this act, again, we're seeing an even more intense form of activism from these women who are fighting for freedom from the British. They, like many in Boston, and probably some of their husbands who are members of the Sons of Liberty, were so upset by the tea tax that they participated in the aftermath of the Boston Tea Party by stealing this coffee from a wealthy merchant in order to fight for their values of freedom. So, in each of these four acts in different parts of the colonies, women came together in these groups, Daughters of Liberty, to fight for liberty for their country alongside the men of what would become the United States of America.